So it starts. Everyone is still eating, I think. All right. So, hi everyone. We are going to talk about the healing power of sound today with these four amazing people who have done very great in that area. And this morning we talk with Lynn in a panel with a very interesting scientist, music therapist, talking about music therapy that's powered by tech, music to understand and change movements, or music as a diagnostic tool. So it's pretty interesting to hear about that. I think in the last few years we have seen more and more startup coming in that area of trying to do something with music, health, and medtech. I think in the last 2 years, or at least last year, I maybe empowered a bit more that. But the four of you have been doing research for over 4 years, so it's not something new, but it's the beginning of commercialization. And we have 4 startups here that play a role in this area. So just to start, I'll give you maybe 30 seconds each to give a very short introduction of what you're doing and try to keep it very simple for non-medical people, if possible.
My name is Nicc Johnson, and I'm the founder and CEO of Music Health. And we've developed a technology called Precision Music to power digital music therapies or music-based interventions. And we've launched a product for dementia care.
Oleg?
Hi, my name is Oleg, and I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Endel. What we do is we have created this technology that generates personalized, adaptive soundscapes to help you focus, relax, and sleep. So we are best known for our app that you can download right now. If you do it, like it's the best sleep you'll ever had. Thank me later. But there's the same technology is used to reimagine popular music that we know and love as soundscapes as well, and that music is published statically on streaming platforms.
Hi, my name is Haley Harris. I'm from the United States, and I'm the fractional CMO for Biomedical Music Solutions. I'm also the CSO for our larger labs company called Sonics. And what we are doing is creating medical-grade sound. Sometimes it's in a musical capacity, but at the baseline, we're starting just on the sound level. We don't believe that sound is benign. And we use it to try and accelerate and improve treatment outcomes in a variety of settings. But Biomedical Music Solutions is currently a proven product that's researched and patented and is in 22 countries for gait and walking improvement.
Hi, my name is Gary Jones. I'm CEO and founder of Medi. We use artificial intelligence to mimic the human brain's response to music. We have distribution deals with the major labels, actually carry Endel's content as well. And our solution is designed to reduce anxiety, pain, and cognitive impairment. So we use it in kind of dental anxiety, chronic pain, dementia, a whole host of morbidities from which music can benefit.
All right. Thank you, everyone. So the first question was for you, Gary. If you could give us a quick introduction so everyone have the same level of information, how music interact with our brain on a daily basis and not just when we listen to music, and that has an impact on how we move, how we dance, how we live.
So music's proven to be the one stimulus that affects the brain more than any other stimulus. There's an awful lot of science out there, and if you look at the brain, the way it works, if we put music to one side, for example, if we look at the brain's ability to process rhythm and tempo, without its ability to do that, we wouldn't be able to walk, dance, or run. So tempo is obviously an important part of music. The auditory cortex is responsible for processing tone and harmony. Without its ability to do that, I wouldn't be able to talk now. All the noises in this room would sound like a flat sounded wall. We wouldn't be able to talk into a crowded restaurant and hear each other. You wouldn't get sound separation. So that's really important. The base of the brain deals with power of sound. So without its ability to do that, we wouldn't be able to recognize conflict in an audible sense or sort of loudness within a piece of music. The hippocampus is to do with music and memory. The amygdala deals more with the psychology of music in terms of its ability to make us feel good and emotional. And music, there's different features within music. Obviously, there's tempo, there's timbre, there's a whole bunch of audio frequencies and stuff, and different parts of the brain process different amounts of those in different mixes at different times, depending on where the music is in its flow.
Thank you.
So,
You can see that you can let Gary talk for an hour on that, and
yeah.
you will
yeah.
know
No,
everything about it
I'm
after.
conscious of the fact I talked to you.
I had briefed him before. So, knowing all that science, all of you have made the decision to use that science and music and sound to proactively act on our brain and do something with it. So this second question for Nicc and Haley, how do you choose the right sound or the right music for the right outcome or the right mental change or therapeutic needs? What do you make that selection and tailor it to each patient?
A lot of research. Our company is started by a woman named Hope Young, who had a Center for Music Therapy for 30 years in Austin, Texas. And so she was right next to patients for 30 years, watching how different ways of playing a sound or strumming on a guitar or a harp or a trombone, pulling it up and down, what that would do on a subconscious level to the body. So for us, that's how we have designed our knowledge of sound and the basic ways our brains naturally respond, just like you do when you talk with children or pets. You raise your voice when you want them to stand up or pay attention, and you want them to calm down. You start going lower and you start going quieter. The brain, as Gary was just describing it, there are some very predictable things about it. And so we start in the therapy setting, and we've worked with extremely disabled patients, so we've had to be very precise.
Yeah, so to add to that, for context, my background is in musicology. So I've been studying the science of music for 2 decades. Our particular focus has been on music taste. So evolving from sound, because everything you said about sound, like sound is incredibly powerful. What we look at with your music taste is understanding. Your music taste is like a living organism, it changes. So understanding exactly what that is, we can figure out very precisely what is the right music for you at any given moment. And then we can tailor the specific outcomes, whether it's Parkinson's, it's sleep, it's anxiety, depression, whatever it is. So we get a very narrow focus of what that right music is in that specific moment.
Interesting. So it makes me a bit question when you say that, and it's like picking the music based on the science. But then when we go on major streaming services, we all have listened or seen at least a playlist about the playlist to sleep, the playlist to focus, the playlist to work. So is there science behind that, or who decided that was the music I needed to sleep? And I know you have a pretty good opinion on that, Oleg. If you can.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my opinion, there's no science behind those playlists, even though technically Endel was kind of envisioned by watching this whole wellness and functional music category grow. We were looking at stuff like music for programming. I don't know if anyone remembers that project, when a bunch of DJs kind of curated an ambient soundscape for people to code to. But then all of that basically evolved into a ton of playlists when an editor at a DSP just goes like, these tracks sound relaxing, people should probably sleep to them. And I'm just like, no, that's not how actual sleep music sounds. 100%, I can tell you that. There's no science behind that. And even more so, a lot of these playlists are actually what is called algatorial, right? Like, so there's a bucket of tracks that have been curated by those editors, and then actually the algorithm that picks a bunch of tracks for you and then mixes them with some of the tracks that have been selected by editors. So all of that is to say that there's no science behind that, because if you talk about, for example, a sleep soundscape, if you think about sleep and sound, how sleep soundscapes should be designed. Sleep is phases, right? Like there's the so-called wind down phase, which kicks in about an hour before you're supposed to go to bed. And this is when your parasympathetic nervous system gets activated, your blood pressure goes down, muscles relax, your body kind of prepares itself for a sleep session. So that is not even when you're in bed again, right? And so that's one phase. Then there's the so-called sleep onset phase, when you're in bed, when you're trying to sleep. This is when, and that is measured, the quality of that phase is measured by how fast can you go to sleep. So you need different sounds for that. Then the sleep phase kicks in, and this is obviously the quality of that is measured by, how often do you wake up during the night? The less, the better, obviously. So you need different sounds for that. And then the wake up phase. So as you can see, it's a very, very structured soundscape that you need for this. And then you press play on the sleep playlist on Spotify, and it's just like a bunch of drone and some soft piano on top of it. It just makes, there's no science behind that.
I was going to say a good example is when you go and look at a piece of art, there can be a very pure pigment of red that can be used in so many ways. And you can stand in front of a piece of art and have 5, 6, 10, 1,500 different interpretations of that one piece of art. What we're doing is it's molecular in a way, right? And we are talking about things that are so basic. We are not talking about art. Now we can try to match art with neurocognition, but to really do it well, you need to be scientific about it, just like you would be as taking a pill and understanding the chemical reactions in the body.
I completely concur because with what both you guys have said, because we've done it. I mean, sleep is incredibly complex. We've looked at the study, and which is why we're not going into that area because we've got enough to do as it is. But in terms of that playlist thing on Spotify, a professional DJ should theoretically be able to create a playlist that kind of relaxes you and triggers your parasympathetic nervous system, or the autonomic branch of the branch of the autonomic nervous system is parasympathetic. But we run it through algorithms, and we're all about smoothing the curve. So we're all about making sure that we get the maximum benefit, that it does, the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, the curve smooth. And with DJs, you get outliers. So effectively, you have this period where it's working, then suddenly whoosh, up you go, and it undoes everything that's gone before. So you're completely right, and it's proven. So.
Thank you. So now going to you, Gary and Haley, how do you use, so the patient is listening to the music or the sound, and obviously something happened in their body, positively or negatively, hopefully positively, but how do you capture the bio response of the body to put that into the loop and adapt the sound or the music in real time? And is there any technology right now in the future that will help with that?
Okay, thank you. So the obvious one is the heart rate variability, which are the beats between the heart. The more varied they are, the more relaxed you are, the more rigid they are, the more stressed you are. So you look to increase heart rate variability. When you do that, you promote dopamine, oxytocin, immunoglobulin. There's also GSR, galvanic skin response, which is a good measure of anxiety, and particularly anxiety caused by pain. Cortisol is another one. Cortisol is a byproduct of the sympathetic branch of the nervous system. It increases. So I'm aware of a couple wearables, so that makes sense, that are in development at the moment, looking at cortisol, but the technology is a bit of a way off. Done by one university in Scotland, Edinburgh. And oxygenation, O2 as well. So those are kind of the four. But you can't. Some of them you have to use in a trial environment because the GSR kit is expensive. And they're not very portable, and there aren't any GSR wearables. But you've got heart rate variability is improving within the Apple smartwatch and a lot of other variables around.
And you change the track when you measure that.
Yeah, so we know how somebody should respond, and if they don't respond, so it's not a playlist as such. It's a dynamic music sequence. So we know how somebody should respond. If they don't respond in the way that we expect, then we dynamically swap the track out to increase their HRV either quicker or slower depending on the use case. That then goes into machine learning component with a view to refining that fingerprint for future use, so that in 5, 10, 15 years time, we can say we're dispensing music as medicine, all of us, or collectively, or
For our use case in particular for walking and gait, because we wanted to do something that was very solid, there's lots of research out there about what stable walking, distance, speed, variability in your balance looks like based upon your height, your weight, your age, etc. And so we used an approved gold standard treadmill that has sensors in the base of the walking that allows to capture the heel strike and the distance in the actual steps, the variability of speed and use of each side if there's an imbalance between those. And then we have also used EEGs with our neuroscientist team in Poland to identify how it has been impacting the brain. That's the short answer.
Okay. Nicc, you wanted to add on this, I think? No?
Yep, happy to add. So we took a slightly different approach in that we wanted to focus on the output to be as flexible as possible. So we've developed a method that allows us to incorporate it with any type of wearable, and we also use sentiment analysis, so using the camera. By using these data points reinforced with the user feedback, we can then adapt the music in real time as needed. Very similar to what you've said. We know what the output should be, and we know how to guide the user there. We use the sentiment analysis and the biometrics to figure out the music taste first, and then we use it to guide that person in their well-being process.
Thank you. So now I can imagine that when you all tell me when you launch your company, there is a lot of time that happened since, and you probably went through a lot of research, trial, because two of you are definitely into ward and hospital, so all these things that need to be cleared, I guess, during trial. But on your side, I know Nicc and Oleg, you also did a lot of research. So can you give us all of you a bit of view on that and those real life examples that help you design your product?
One of the things that we did that cut a lot of corners is we did not design a device. We designed a software and composed our own music. So we didn't have to go through all of the different trials of our device. And now what we have is not limited to just one device. We don't have hardware costs. We were able to use the Biodex treadmill, for example, and those are already in hospitals all over the world. They're also in universities and research centers. So we could also capture research without having to put our own additional dollars into the R&D. I think that when you can, so many people have said, partner where their partnerships exist, there's a benefit for these centers to use our solution, because if it improves their outcomes, by all means. So we are willing to use and let them have the access for free so that we can tag team on their research and make it more widely available.
You know, it's interesting. I mean, we did a ton of research, and a lot of it was, when we were going through this acceleration program in LA, Techstars Music, a lot of mentors were like, how do you know that it works? And we were like, yeah, we need a methodology to measure the effect Endel has on people. And I literally emailed Michal Csikszentmihalyi, this famous figure in psychology who invented the term flow and who wrote the book Flow. I was just like, we're working on this thing. Can you help us design the methodology? And he was just come to my office. And he was teaching psychology in Claremont University in California. So we get in the car, we drive there. I go there thank you for having us. And he was teaching, he was about to retire. He was teaching his last semester there.
Oh, cool.
So we go to we go to his professor's house on the campus, and we're like, this is what we're doing, this is the app. He was like, this is interesting. I'm like, well, can you help us design the methodology? He's like, just use mine. And he stands up and gives us a bunch of forms that he designed. So he came up with this, it's called the experience sampling method. And this is a set of questions that people need to be answering at a certain point, several times a day, basically. They were literally paging. They had people wearing pagers when he was doing his research. They would page people, and they would start filling out the forms. And those were, there were people like climbers, for example, who were under an avalanche, and they would just be filling out the forms, as to understand if they are in a state of flow or not. We kind of digested all of that, turned that into an interactive form inside of the app, and just sent it out there. And we had a few thousand people using the app in beta mode, and we were just asking them, pinging them, and they were just, can you answer those questions? And when we looked at the data, we were like, whoa, it seems to be working. But what's interesting is I was like, that is not enough. We need EEG data. We need to really, we need people wearing EEG headbands, and we need to be measuring it beat by beat. And I want to see what's happening inside of their head when they're listening to Endel, because this is how science works. And we did all of that. And long story short, we published a peer-reviewed scientific white paper that in Frontiers of Computational Neuroscience that proves that listening to a real-time, personalized, adaptive soundscape is more efficient than listening to a static playlist on Spotify, at least when it comes to concentration. But we're also part of this project called Lullaby, which is 5 of the biggest European universities have come together to study the effects of sound and music on sleep. And I was just in Barcelona just a week ago at the science camp, and I was like, and we are the only tech company who was invited to participate in that project. So I was like, I'm so humbled to be here. Thank you so much. And I would love for you guys to help us kind of measure what's happening in people's head, when they're sleeping and listening to Endel, because all we have is subjective kind of self-reporting. And everyone in the room, a bunch of scientists, way smarter than me, they were like, well, you have it. Like, this is science. And I was completely blown away by it. I was like, what? No, but we need brain data. They're like, no, you have self-reporting. This is enough. Of course, we're going to do brain data. But like what I'm saying is we're sitting on literally millions of hours of sleep data from people coupled with people's self-reporting on like the quality of their sleep and objective data from their Apple Watches, Oura Rings, stuff like that. So, and that's literally millions of hours.
Yeah.
That's what we have.
That's fantastic. And Nicc, do you remember the question?
Yeah, I think so. Well, for us, it was a little bit different because I initially started all of this. I started talking about music and health about a decade ago. And initially, I was a consultant from a musicology perspective. So I would work with neuroscientists and music therapists on figuring out methods to understand what music would be appropriate for different use cases. The reason I started this is because I saw that they would probably be very ineffective in building the technology because that wasn't their background. But because of that, we got to work with some of the leading universities. So even now, we work very closely with Berklee College of Music in Boston, University of Chicago, and in Australia, we work with the Mark's Brain and Health Institute. And we can't share them yet, but next year we will publish several clinical trials on the impact of music in dementia care, but also maternity care, and also looking at Parkinson's.
Gary.
I've decided to go the hard way. Like Oleg, I want to know everything, anything. I just, it keeps me awake at night. What's happening here? What's happening in the brain when we do this? What's happening in the auditory cortex? And the challenge you've got when you're running a business that should really be continually based on efficacy is the trials and the cost of the trials, particularly in our position. So a randomized controlled trial costs about £250,000, $300,000.
It's very expensive.
Yeah. A real-world validation, which is, particularly in the US, there's much more of a move with the Digital Therapeutics Alliance towards real-world validations. They're slightly cheaper at 50 to 80, but that's still a lot of money for a startup. So we kind of mix them. So one of our approaches, we did a number of closed user group trials with an NHS trust and the neurology department there. We then moved into the dementia department. That worked. They've now brought us into ICU, and they're now a paying customer. But it's about ongoing all the time. In fact, I had the conversation this morning about how every user, and I think you'll probably all agree with this, is a trial participant. We are constantly on 100%. Trial all the time, and we collect that data and we process that data and we use that data. But just to give you an idea, an RCT, we go through the same process as Big Pharma. So an IRB, or in the UK an IRIS form, is 468 pages. You generally ping in about 20 accompanying documents that back up the questions. It's a long process. You go through several panels, then an interview. The interview is quite bizarre because the interview is supposed to involve people from the real world. So you sit down, you're pitching to a vicar, a plumber, an electrician, a neuroscientist, a real mixed bag of people, because that it's like a jury, it's like a traditional court jury. Then you get through that. That takes 9 months, and there's a lot of costs and a lot of people involved. But get out the other end, do the trial right, and you've got some data. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 6 lined up for the next 12 to 18 months.
So same process basically for a drug that could potentially kill me because it's never been used.
And it's
music.
And it's not right. Again, conversation I had this morning. The DTA in the States are looking to launch what's known as the Digital Therapeutics Act or Prescription Act. They're trying to get it through Congress so that whole process is simplified. It should be split out nice in the UK, which is the authority that basically says how much, it talks about, tells doctors how much of a drug they can prescribe, what drugs what drugs can be prescribed and what not. I've got meta tools, but they don't deal with digital therapeutics, and that's a massively growing area. I mean, the start of the incubator I worked in Hull, there are about 4 of us in there that are digital therapeutics, so it needs to be addressed.
So, That might be fun because when you have the pharmaceutical industry, full of process, very long process, like not easy for new entrants, I imagine. And now you have the music industry, full of process as well, and you, Gary and Nicc, who are working with commercial music, and I will come back after to you to talk about the difference. But how did you navigate those two giant industry when you arrive with a startup with a use case that is very different and not something that they are used to work with in both way? Licensing, technology, trial, how does it look like?
Do you want that one?
Scare us.
Sure. Fun topic. In terms of the healthcare side of things, admittedly, I went into it a little bit naively first, and I think that's been a blessing. If I would have known everything that I know now, then I probably wouldn't have done it. But that actually helped me. So on the healthcare side, we got a lot of advice, and that was really helpful. On the licensing side, I come from that world. I understand that world. I know how painful it is. So we actually had a license before we had a product because I knew that it would take quite a lot of time. And for us at the time, when I was pitching this, which is a while ago, we essentially pitched a new vertical for the major labels, which was healthcare. They were still at the time looking at fitness. That was the main driver. And so we had to have a lot of meetings explaining why this was different. And I can safely say I spent about a year doing that. You're welcome, everyone. It was a
Not
pain in the
very
ass.
long a year. Sometimes it's not that long a year, right?
This was
Negotiating
before the
rights.
deal. Before the deal. And we eventually got there. So thanks to that, I think there's now a category. More and more companies are getting licenses around this, which is really exciting. But it's a real big challenge, you know, because if you compare it to streaming services, there's many reasons why you wouldn't want to use commercial music. It's because of the margins. You lose a lot of money paying rights holders, and you still need to have a viable business model. So these are all the things you need to take into account.
Guess what? I went the difficult way again. So same as Nicc, really. We split our licenses. So I ran Sony's music streaming service for 4 years and worked with a number of other streaming services with large corporates, Samsung and people like that. And I learned very, very quickly. I touched all aspects of that business. I learned very, very quickly what a Bain licensing is. So we split it. So we split it into two parts. We wrote a sandbox license, I guess, healthcare sandbox license with Universal. Our lawyer, Liz Moody, with Universal and Warner's and Sony adopted it. So we split it so we could process our algorithms, run some trials. And then the commercial bit comes after, because if we didn't, I wouldn't be sitting here now. We'd still be going on like Nicc. You know, ours was actually 2 years because we had all three to talk with. And then you've got the independents. So an organisation like Merlin, which is maxed at the moment, dealing with loads and loads of requests and doesn't have the bandwidth. But you know, we've got there, and we're getting there.
And you're still in the process, right? Still in the process.
It's still, yeah. We did this. We did one of the deals last night. I'm pleased to say we've got a couple others to do. One of them's we think's okay. The other one, not surprisingly, there's always sticking points, but we'll get around that.
You will get there.
But yeah, I mean, part of the reason for delaying it as well is because the labels don't know the economics of this service. It's not like Spotify. It's where you got $9.99 a month. You get site licenses from large care home groups like we've got in the UK. You get, if you look at the mental health, if you look at employee benefit programs, you know, they're $4.99 a month. They squeeze as much into it as possible, and the ticket size is really small. So you're talking cents. It's a macro business, but on scale, hopefully. So there's lots of variables. So we've been working with the labels in defining what that is, and I think we've got there.
You will get there. Great. So coming from here is a question for the three of you, because you have make different choices. Nicc went for commercial music. You went for audio and self-production. And Oleg, you are doing AI generating soundscape. I know you all have a very strong view on why one works better, at least for your use case. If we could, you could talk us about that.
Sure. So for in a medical setting, precision is important. And we did our own composing of sounds so that it could be as pure as possible. We wanted to make sure that we were also aware that in some cases, patients can be triggered negatively by songs or certain sounds that remind them of a traumatic circumstance or are just too overstimulating for their brains to be able to process. So we did work with and composed our own specific sounds. We also really wanted to make sure that the sounds that we created were adaptive so that when we sped them up, they didn't sound like chipmunks, or if we slowed it down, it didn't go like these. So it was a very particular process to make sure that it served the purpose that we were initially trying to do. Now, we did also, though, allow our technology, it has Spotify built into it, so that if someone is highly functioning and they want to use music that they're used to and they're not a trauma or an overstimulated type of person, they certainly can do that. That was our easy way around. We don't have to worry about licensing because we're using the platform of Spotify. We pay for that license, and it's in the particular settings that we're in and so forth.
Yeah, you were saying to me that using a music that might trigger past.
That's right.
That is a danger.
And even, I think, one of the very sad, scary examples is in the NICU. Babies, especially very premature babies, are so wildly susceptible to sound that they can crash just because of an overstimulation, because their little bodies only have so much energy to send to parts of their bodies. And this is an area that is really misunderstood or under researched. So,
Understand? Oleg?
Well, we kind of do both, right? In a way, and I'll tell you how we landed there. So we started Endel, and it was just our soundscapes, our in-house sound design team designed those soundscapes and kind of trained the model on the stems that we produced ourselves. And for a long time, for the first couple of years, it was just our soundscapes. But the way the technology works is you create a bunch of stems. And those stems are created according to the science that we just discussed, and then you train your model on the stems so that it can produce more, right? And that's this AI is powering our app. So for the first 2 years, we were doing just that. And then we had this idea of okay, but what would happen if we were to take stems from another artist and feed them into our machine that is trained on our stems? So effectively, you would have an Endel soundscape, still same science, but it would have a DNA of another artist, kind of diluted, almost diluted basically into our sound. And we did that with Grimes, right? So she approached us. She was like, "I'm a big fan. I cannot sleep. You guys helping me sleep. Do you want to do a project together?" We were like, "Cool, yeah, let's do it." And this is how this AI lullaby soundscape was born. And it was a big moment for us. Landed on the cover of the New York Times, all of that. And then that set us on a path to work with a bunch of other big name artists like Miguel and James Blake and Plastic Man and others on the app. Weirdly, having done all of that, and that was a whole process, when you look at data of what people on the app are actually listening to, it's mostly our stuff, not artist stuff. So they come for Grimes, but they stay for Endel, weirdly. So we were like, well, that's cool. Yeah, that's
good learning.
That's a scenario.
Yeah, that's very flattering.
Yeah.
But that's on the app side, right? But at the same time, I'm obsessed with this idea of, turning your favorite music into a scientifically engineered functional soundscape. It's just something about it that I cannot let go. And so that set us on the path of signing deals with UMG and Warner and Believe and others. And what we're doing there is we are processing stems from all kinds of music. And we worked with Sia and Black and so many artists like The Blaze recently. And we're reimagining their music as functional soundscapes. They're static because we're publishing them on streaming services, but still, this is what scientifically engineered, artist-centric wellness music sounds like. So if you go to Spotify and you search for Endel, you'll see a lot of stuff that we put out with all kinds of artists. So that's what we do with that is a mix kind of our technology with
It's amazing because in the last 2 days, 2 days before the conference, I have this accelerator with many startups, and something we're telling them is don't try to fight with the industry because they will be here and you need them. But if you can bring some value to them and become a partner, is it really what you're doing? Like here, you helping them creating something different, and they need you more than, but you need them true because it's business, it's a partnership, but you're solving a problem for them.
But yeah, so I just want to add 2 cents on that, in terms of like what's the business opportunity for majors there and for artists, frankly, right? Like to the so-called wellness or functional music market that I'm talking about on the DSPs, that has nothing to do with major label music. I mean, all of this music is not major label music. So
But it's in their catalog, right?
No. I mean, if you go to Spotify,
I've got your catalog there.
Yeah, you do now because we basically came to UMG.
No, the catalog, your catalog is not for the major, but you are helping them doing soundscape.
Yes,
right?
yes, exactly.
That's
And
what
my
I
whole
mean, you
pitch
are
to
value
them
for
was
them.
like, this category is so big right now that it's actually diluting your market share on the DSPs.
Yeah.
Because when people want to go to sleep, they don't listen to James Blake. They go and listen to a white noise or a dishwashing sound machine, a hairdryer sound, right?
Oh,
so I'm like,
vacuum cleaner.
I can create. Remember how Robert Kinsel was like, well, an Ed Sheeran stream cannot equal like a stream of rain sounds. And I was like, what about Ed Sheeran rain sounds? Rain Sheeran. Yeah, because that's what we do, and that literally adds streams to their catalog.
And
I mean,
Nick, you choose to go with commercial music, and is that just a link with dementia and people having this happy memory from the past, or you believe in commercial music for other case than just dementia?
No, so there's use cases for both sides of this. We started with commercial music specifically for dementia care, and that's all to do with the brain and familiarity. I'm going to talk about that in an hour, so I'm not going to bore you with it now. And that's very specific because we need to activate long-term memory to get the other areas of the brain functioning properly for somebody with dementia, and that's how we get them awake again, as we call them, back into that moment, which then helps with the care routine and everything else we're doing. There are other very clear applications and evidence where familiar music is really important, but there are plenty of others, and what you're working on, where you don't need it.
Yeah.
And in many of the applications that we're going to be building in the future, there's a combination of the two. Because the other thing that we focus on a lot is vibe, the vibe DNA. And much to your point where you're saying you get a famous artist, they come in for that, but then actually they'll revert back to the other stuff because it's got the same vibe and feel, but it's more appropriate for that moment. So it depends on what you're doing. If you're releasing dopamine, if you focus on cortisol, if you're focused on sleep, everything has a different use case.
Okay, so potentially in the future you might add to your solution soundscape or production audio and not remaining only on commercial music.
All
I
the
was
things.
going to say, in
Interesting.
addition to that, it just depends on what your goal is, right? If you're wanting more wellness, there's more opportunity for those types of products. If you're looking for molecular, neuroplasticity and all of those like more scientific
medical
things,
outcome.
you need a different avenue.
There's one other
For
area as
Medicare.
well. I'm conscious of time. There's one other area which is lyrics. So lyrics, to your point about traumatic events, lyrics are really, really important. So we've got a language model we're developing that kind of filters out certain lyrics, and it's actually incredibly complicated. And I'll give you an example of why it's important. So a friend of mine who was one of the original people that tried the service when I first came out with the idea was going into hospital for a very, very major operation. She was incredibly scared. She said, "Can you do this for me? I want to try it." Very skeptical about it. So we all, the developers and I sat around the table, we huddled around, got it done, press play, press enter. The playlist came up, and the first track that came up was "Not Knocking on Heaven's Door," which is not the kind of thing you want to see if you're going for a major operation and you're worried about the outcome of it. So lyrics are important, language is important, and you've got to be conscious of that as well. We call them red flag tracks. So.
I've just very last question and closing question because we just told me I thought it was 3 minutes, it's 2 minutes. What needs each of you, maybe very short, what needs to change right now for the music to be entirely part of people's everyday treatments in both those very regulated industry? Like what need to be what need to change? What happened right now that will make your life easier and us being able to use those technology?
I would say the awareness that sound is not benign. It can be both very impactful in a positive way, and it can also be used and is researched as a torture device. So, awareness of even the beeps in the backgrounds, everything that makes sound has opportunity to do harm or to do good.
Yeah, I echo that, and I think the other thing is the kind of, on a business side, the deregulation, the reduction in regulation, and making it easier for digital therapeutics and businesses like ours to be adopted within healthcare mainstream.
Thank you.
I actually think it's already happening, frankly. I mean,
You're very successful.
I'm sure everyone in this room uses sound and music.
I'm talking hospitals.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But like, if we're talking about like
your sector,
I think the question was like every aspect of your daily life. Hopefully, hospitals are not an aspect of your daily life. Yeah,
True. But for some people.
Yeah, for some people, yeah,
Not
for
in this
sure.
room.
But I mean, hopefully not the people in this room. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, I'm sure everyone here already uses sound and music every day to help them regulate how they feel, right?
Yeah.
Like that. It's already happening. It's just a question of, exactly awareness and picking the right tools, so to speak, to do that. And I'm hoping that Endel is kind of the premium brand in that space that is really truly personalized, adaptive, functional. Yeah. So that's what I would say. It's already here. I mean, this whole market is here.
Nicc, quickly to close.
Agree with all of that. I would just add as well economic impact. So for us to see mass adoption, particularly in the healthcare space, they need to understand the unit economics and why that versus something else. We all as humans prefer to take less medication and do other things that are better for us, but understanding the value of that is a game changer, particularly for policymakers, insurers, governments.
Depending which point of view too, right? Pharmaceutical company versus government versus health institution.
We've had some good debates.
Yeah, probably.
Can I also just say, we need you. We need you to put your dollars behind our types of companies, truly. Pay us, please. No, but your dollars speak to how important this area has impact. You are all music passionate people. So come and talk to us or the people yesterday about how you can help us partner or raise funds or participate in grants or meet with folks to help make this a reality.
And speak to your contacts, speak to those that put the message out there, I think.
Yeah. All right, thank you, everyone. So after the break, Nicc will be on the keynote talking about his technology and what he's doing currently. So I invite you to go to see that. The other speakers will be around also this afternoon, so we don't have time for question now, but feel free to come to speak to them.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.